Welcome to the University of Sunderland's roundtable discussion, and the theme today is Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month and collaboration. My name is Wendy Price, and I'm Head of Widening Access and Participation here at the University of Sunderland. In January 2021, the university signed the GTRSB, or Gypsy, Traveller, Roma, Showman and Boater Pledge, into higher education. And this was a firm commitment from the university to understand and celebrate GTRSB students and provide a safe and welcoming environment for them here on campus. Part of that pledge commitment also involved organising and hosting events like today's. So I'm delighted now to pass you over to my guests to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm George. I'm a professional musician. I've been a professional musician for around about 30 years or so. I play and perform music, and I also write music.
Hi, I'm Paula Strachan, head teacher at St Teresa's Primary School in Darlington, where 26% of the children are from Gypsy Roma Traveller heritage.
I'm Richard O'Neill. I'm a storyteller and an author, and I grew up in a nomadic Romani family in the northeast of England.
Great. So our theme today is about creating a culture of collaboration, and it's very relevant because being collaborative is part of one of our university values. So it's something that resonates very much with us as an institution, but it's also something that we've all collaborated together, and we're hoping to bring a bit more about that to the discussion today and tell you a bit more about what we've been doing up until this point and build on further. As I mentioned, it's Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month this month. And since 2008, people right across the UK have been celebrating Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month. And this is a time for us, as well as other times through the year, to work to celebrate and to educate others about the contribution that GRT people and cultures and communities have on society. The theme for this year's Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month is Weaving Journeys, a celebration of Gypsy, Roma and Traveller lives, histories and cultures. And the theme will focus on patterns of travel, spanning the past and leading to the future. For the first question today, I'd like to chat to Richard and ask him what GRT History Month means to him, and why is it important that we raise awareness and celebrate GRT communities?
Well, what it means to me, it's an opportunity to do just that. It puts the focus on GRT people, our history, our culture, and the things that the contribution, because again, when I was a kid growing up in school, we did history, we did 1066 and all of that. And I went to lots of different schools around the northeast of England, and secondary school too. But there was never anything at all about Gypsy, Roma or Traveller people. And yet, we had war heroes like everybody else. We had people who were musicians. We had people who'd made huge contributions, in terms of agriculture, lots and lots of fruit picking. And I can remember in the northeast, nowadays we have half term around October, but it was called potato picking week back then, when people used to go and pick those potatoes. So lots and lots of those things. And I think it's just an opportunity to shed light on that. And the fact that we're here in the university is so important, I think, because it sends a very positive message to people that there is representation. And the theme of collaboration, I guess we'll talk about later, which is so important.
Mm-hmm. Paula, GRT communities are hugely underrepresented in higher education currently, but are also underrepresented in education earlier in the life cycle as well. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the barriers and challenges that pupils might face in education, and why you think that representation is an issue?
I think the children can face many barriers. One of the barriers that our children face is quite an unconscious bias, and sometimes actually racism towards these children. They are known to have the worst attendance. They have very low achievement in some areas. But actually what we find is a barrier for our travelling children in particular. Schools take a long time to say if they've got a place for these children or not. And if you're only travelling for work for a month, it can be over a month before somebody says, oh, we've got a space. So a lot of our children, when they do travel, try very hard to get into education, but often aren't always made to feel as welcome as they should be. It's an ongoing problem, and one we're really trying to tackle. And the GTRSB pledge is trying to get that collaborative approach of like-minded institutions to welcome these children, because they bring so much rich diversity to a school, and their stories of their travelling, it's just fantastic.
There's also a GTRSB pledge for schools.
There is.
And am I right in thinking your school was the first in the country to sign that?
That's true. Yes, we were the first to sign up for the pledge. It's growing month on month. And actually it's taking quite an interesting dynamic because we're about to have conversations with Ofsted about how they can support schools with a high percentage of Gypsy Roma traveller pupils, because obviously that might impact things like attendance, but celebrating the culture of these children, they have a right to travel and that is in their blood. That's what they do.
Yeah. Why was signing that pledge important to you as a head, Paula?
Because we serve every single child in our community, and no matter which community they're from, because we're a very diverse school, it's crucially important that we stand up and say, we're here for these children, we're here for these communities. And I just felt that was the best way of acknowledging how much we value that community within our school.
Great. And obviously we've collaborated, the university and your school, with an outreach programme for all of your pupils. Would you like to share a little bit more information about that?
Yes, so we're really, really excited. It's actually been nominated for a Heist Award.
Yeah.
So we worked with Sunderland University and we've got a very bespoke careers package that absolutely aims to break down any barriers, but equally lets children know that they can achieve what they want to achieve. So actually, if their long-term goal isn't higher ed, what can they achieve in the meantime? It's totally opened the children's eyes up to further education, higher education. We've now got more children talking about going to university. They've got a much wider sense of what university is like, and they came up and visited. We brought them up last year, and we hear them now more in the corridors, and the conversation's gone to when I go to university. And I think that's really important because our school, 93% of the children come from low areas of education and skills backgrounds. So actually now we've got children really excited about going to university right from being 5, which is crucial, isn't it? So,
for us as an institution, so important as well, because we strongly believe it, as you know, Paula, that everybody deserves the opportunity to progress to university if they want to.
Yeah.
Anyone with that talent, ability and background should not be a barrier. Yeah. So this collaboration has been something really exciting for me to work on, and I'm very interested to see how we can develop that further.
Super excited about the development of this.
Another collaboration, which is very exciting, is the collaboration that Richard and George have been working on since, I believe, 2020. George, do you want to start by telling us a little bit about this? Because we've just come straight from a live recording that was streamed to almost 1,000 pupils right across the UK. And this started with a conversation, I think, that you and George had 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I was acting in a kind of like a phone technical support capacity to Richard, because Richard was recording a story for my wife, who's a storyteller and kind of provides storytelling work in London. And we were just talking about how to record on the phone. And Richard and I are both talkers. What was supposed to be a 10-minute conversation went for about an hour and a half. And I was just really, really fascinated to hear about Richard's life. And we come from different backgrounds. Part of my artistic practice is to create songs and music which are trying to create understanding, I suppose. And I suppose that's a lot of my practice, is trying to work out what are things, basically. Yeah. And Richard and I just arranged to have a Zoom writing session. And typically, so I've worked as a professional songwriter, typically a writing session lasts for a day and you come up with a song. And our first writing session, we came up with a fully formed song within an hour and a half. Wow. And that's the longest it's taken for us to write a song. And what tends to happen is we'll have conversations away from the writing session where we'll think about subjects which are close to Richard's heart, because I'm acting as a facilitator. It's not my voice. And then, sometimes like an idea will kind of just percolate for a year or so. And then when we're actually in the writing session, it'll take 40 minutes or so from a few words where I'll be going, oh, those are good. And then Richard goes, well, I've got a ton more of those. and then I'm acting as an editor and putting a melody to it, which the melody which Richard likes. Mm-hmm. And then we work in that way. And I've done a lot of work with different writers and stuff like that. And this one just fizzes. It just works really quickly.
we were on the phone talking, and again, you know, George is brilliant at all this kind of stuff and producing and everything. And he said, "What sort of phone have you got?" And it wasn't, you know, it's not a big upmarket phone, man. He says, "Let me just check that phone's got the right thing for this and that." And he did, and that was fine. We got that sorted out, no problem. And we got talking about my background, and his background is very interesting life as well. And what he probably hasn't told you actually, but he did write a #1 record in Europe.
Really?
So I thought, it's too honest, you see. So I thought, this is the man.
Yeah.
This is the man I need to help me write these songs. If you know, #1, it's got to be good. So we chatted about it, and it went on from there. And I think in terms of collaboration, you know, the collaboration we have with Sunderland University, the collaboration we have with your school, the collaboration that George and I have is all, to me, comes from the nomadic way of collaborating, which is, it's very, very honest, it's very powerful, it gets things done quickly and properly, but it's organic as well. And I think, you know, you do it with your heart first and your head afterwards. And I think that's how it works. You just know you're going to do this. And in terms of collaboration, Gypsy, Roma, Traveller groups, you know, and I, as I say, I come from a nomadic group, and the generation before mine lived in wagons, and they went through some very hard times, the 1930s, 40s, 50s, etc. But collaboration is key. A small group of people, if you don't collaborate, you cease to exist as nomadic people. And we also see this now, we're talking about bridging it into universities. You know, I do a lot of work with organisations and companies who have just got, you know, just have meetings and don't even know why they're having a meeting anymore. And I think, you know, if you look at companies now, some of the fastest growing companies, the fastest growing movements, they are small groups of people who just get things done. And I think, you know, in terms of, we talk about representation, but it's in terms of achievement, and I think it's in terms of producing things. So I think, you know, what we have produced as a collaboration, this morning we've done this, we've done that, and that your team behind the scenes, but as quite a small group, we've made this huge impact.
Yeah, I think there's a commitment to action. So, like, for example, our conversations are pretty effective. So that, like, there's a part of our conversation which is basically like a dreaming phase, where like ideas are coming up, what's happening with your day, things that you feel about, things which are important to you. And then when it comes to, so for example, this phase here, you know, I identified a few things that we just needed to achieve to make sure that when we came this year, we were ready to go. You had some ideas as well, and then we went, let's do it. And I think that's kind of part of why it works, is that we tend to know when we're supposed to do things, and then we just get cracking, really, and not so precious about if something's not quite right. You just say.
I think it's more about the end result than it is about the people, the individuals. You know, when you talk about the work you do in school, it's about the children.
Yes.
When you talk about the work you're doing in inclusion, it's about the students. And if we talk about, you know, you say your kids are interested in coming to university now, but that's all good, isn't it? We have that sometimes with some universities who will say, come to university, bring you for the day, give you something to eat. Oh, it's all singing, all dancing. But they don't then see people like them represented in the university. So today we've got Romani people in the university doing stuff, and not just as a one-off, not just Sunderland saying, we've done the Gypsy thing, which is what some people, we've done that. Who are we going to get in next year? This is we were here last year, we're here again this year. We'll do more things as it grows.
And that ongoing commitment from Sunderland to support those underrepresented groups. If you were wanting to go to university and you were in an underrepresented group, you'd want to come here.
Yes, you would.
Because you're not going to be a man on an island on your own, or a woman on an island on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fantastic.
And
opportunities for those people.
And the fact that you keep in touch with Wendy, you keep in touch with people like me and others, and there's that support mechanism being built up.
Yeah. You talked earlier about collaboration, Richard, and about that nomadic way. And we chatted earlier this morning because you actually introduced me to Paula initially. True. And we didn't know where this collaboration would go, but it's something that has been hugely beneficial for us as an institution, for me personally as well, actually, as well as professionally, but also ultimately for the young people at your school. So I just want to say thank you for that. It was a great meeting.
I mean, that's one of your skills at working out which duos will work really, really well
Oh,
together.
I am,
It's definitely one of
I'm,
your strengths.
as all of us, I'm getting older by the day. I just want to. I've got time to waste time, but for me, that's a really interesting thing, because you do need those people to take action. And, again, I always think of one of my old aunties, and we talk about communication, and the technology is brilliant. I love it. It's fabulous. But, my auntie said, well, there's 3 ways of getting information out there. She says there's telephone, there's telegraph, and there's teletraveller. And that word of mouth is so important.
Definitely.
And our community traditionally would be, if you vouched for somebody, all the old people used to say, in working class communities, my word is my bond.
Yeah.
Well, with travelling people, it's the same. But if we vouch for somebody, that means that they're brilliant. They're absolutely fantastic. And, so there are people who I do introduce and recommend, and there's ones I don't.
Stay on the other list when
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Just going back to your collaboration and the partnership that you've got, Richard and George, I'm very curious to know that when you had that first tech call, as you mentioned, did you think you'd be here with the songs that you've created? Where did you hope to be a few years later, and how does this measure up?
It's funny, if I'm being absolutely honest, I don't necessarily have a plan.
Right.
Something that we were talking about yesterday is that idea of, your family saying of, where's the profit in it? Not meaning where's the money.
Yeah.
But what's the good? What's the value? And I was like, no, there's something really good here. We did a few, and then what actually happened is that somebody who I work with in bands said, oh, you should apply for a grant at the English Folk Song and Dance Society. So we did, and we didn't get it. So we did it again, and then we got it. And because it wasn't about how much money it was, because it was like 450 quid, £500. But what that was a badge to say that we could, this is going to take it forward. And this was at about the time when you started having conversations with Wendy about it. So I was getting this thing sorted. So that was last year. So we did the recording with the grant, I don't know, a month and a half before we came up last year. And it kind of grew. There's no massive agenda. I mean, partly because I've kind of got to a point in my career where it's I think of music as like a companion, and as also art is a higher purpose. It's there's always so much being generated, and that's great. So there's a lot of commercial stuff being generated, but there's also another reason for making things. And sometimes it's the journey of the writing, as much as the actual product, so maybe our first conversation was the start of a journey, and we're still on it. So that's good.
Definitely seems like that.
I think if you plan too much for things sometimes, then you kill it before it has a chance to grow. It's like with little children, sometimes they plant seeds, they're often poking them every day to see if they're growing, and it kills the plant. So it's just when we started to do it, and actually it was better than I thought. So these songs were better than I thought. And then on my travels, I'm thinking, okay, where can I place these? Where will they do the most good? So I mentioned it to Wendy, and then we came up here. And then it's just carried on. So, the next logical progression will be, because we had 1,000 kids this morning there, and they want the songs. They wanted one boy wanted to request the song again, a particular song. So I think the logical progression is to put them into a songbook, so that they've got the lyrics, maybe QR codes that have got the music, so they can listen to the music and then do their own version, karaoke version style, and then maybe some of the background to the songs, and encourage them to sing those songs and create their own songs as well. So that would be the next logical. But I thought about that when we did our first songs. It just kind of leads itself, and I think you have to do that.
Yeah. And George, just thinking about collaboration, and obviously the collaboration between yourself and Richard, do you have any plans for the future, or are you just going to organically see where the relationship leads?
So it's an interesting one, because these words which I've facilitated and kind of used kind of editing and top line on it. So, I'm a co-writer, but
Yeah.
these are not words for me. So it's kind of, it's a funny situation. So I have a connection with them, but they're not for me. So it would be great to find a way of finding a singer of their heritage who connects with it, who we could then have, basically make the conversation a bit bigger. So, what we're waiting for, and it'll happen, is that another doer who comes along who shares the kind of values. Because Richard and I, we kind of realised fairly quick that, you go, hey, you're all right, I'm all right. We trust each other. We're just, because, that's the relationship. So for me, I'm just gently asking around and seeing who's going to turn up, who goes, oh yeah, that would work. I'd like to do that. And you've got to kind of find the right person for it. So it's like, it's not somebody who thinks that this is, it's
going to make them famous.
Yeah, like it's like a false god of success. You don't want that. What you want is somebody who goes, oh, no, this is a good thing we're doing. This is a legacy. This is something that we can build on so that we can have something like this just going on further and further. Because like 1 year, 2 year, who cares, man? It's like 20, 30 years. That's really, really good. Where you go, oh, look, great. We can pass it on now. And somebody else has got it because the precedent's been made,
I think something really, really important in what George just said there, because we talk about things like allyship. There's real allyship, which you have to put yourself out there, like which you two have done, and there's plastic allyship, which is just shiny and just goes on the internet. But what George is talking about there, and again, he's too modest to say this, is that he didn't want to just take ownership of this stuff. If it had been a different person, they might have thought, hang on a minute, we've got all this stuff, we've got these good songs, I can sell these somewhere. They're half mine, I'll take them and I'll flog them. But what George said to me just a couple of weeks ago, actually, he said, I don't sing these songs anywhere else. We only sing them when we're together.
Yeah, I never play them out.
No.
I want to, but can't. It's not for me. It's like I don't play. I love blues songs, like country blues for the 1920s and 1930s, and I play them, but I don't play them out because they're not mine.
Right.
And I think there's a real problem in art of people not being able to see that. And it can be very corrosive.
And that's just an amazing authenticity. Yeah. I think that to me, when he said that, I don't put any restrictions on him. I wouldn't want him to, because I think it all starts to go odd then. But he just came and said it on his own, which is just a brilliant thing. It's about respect. It's about creativity. It's about all those things that, we love working together. Coming up to Sunderland last year was fantastic. Coming up again this time, it's just fantastic. If that's all that ever happens with these songs, that we only ever come to Sunderland and come to your school, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
When you come to Sunderland, you've had thousands of people right around the country hearing today as well.
Absolutely.
So you have got that national following now as well.
Yeah, we have. And that's just a beautiful thing. But again, that's organic.
Well, we can send them the resource we made last year. So I'll make sure that happens. Yeah.
And just finally, to finish off with in today's session, Richard, thinking about Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month and our theme of collaboration, why do you think it's important that as professionals and as humans that we do use this opportunity to collaborate? And what would you hope, particularly in that theme of GRT History Month, that we can achieve by doing that?
Well, it's 500 years we've been in this country.
Yeah.
So, we can't go back into the past and say, well, why have we not done this? Why have we not done this? But I just think it's our turn. I think it's only fair. I'm being like a child now, aren't I? It's fair. It's only fair. It's our turn. But it's right. If you're going to talk about inclusion, you're going to talk about equality. That means everybody, and that definitely means us. And I think some people just think, oh, it's too hard to deal with these people. There's this, there's this, there's this. Who even are these people? And you should know. Every school in the UK should have at least one authentically written book from a Gypsy or Roma Traveller writer. They don't. Why is that? We need to challenge that. Yeah. When you email a university and say, what are you doing for GRT History Month? And they go, oh, I didn't know when it was on. And they're the equalities person.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We need to, and I don't, the problem is sometimes when you come from an ethnic minority group, then you will be seen as challenging or difficult. Whereas we're not. I'm actually just trying to help. Because you need to do that. You know, your duty as a public body, you get public money, your duty is to do that. You have to be proactive. You have to, the bare minimum is going out and connecting. That's the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm. But like you said as well, Richard, I think as a university, we need to have that true representation here. And I think, Paula, you said it's such more of a richer experience for a young person
100%.
from a GRT community to, you know, we go into schools, but then they come here and they see someone like themselves on campus and they can feel part of that connection and that community.
That was why we linked in with Richard, because it was important for these children to realise that actually GRT children can be writers, can be authors, can be anything they want to be.
You know, and it's a really, it's this lovely, you know, traveller culture is very circular. You know, we're not hierarchical. We're very circular in everything pretty much. And you know, I went to school in Darlington.
You did.
Darlington is pretty much my hometown. If I had a hometown, it would be Darlow.
Yeah.
And to see this happening in Darlow,
brilliant.
It's just incredible.
Yeah.
You know, to go back to Darlington, you know, as a writer, an author, internationally published, blah, 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 and to go into school and see the traveller kids. And then, you know, to go to reception and they say, I'm here to, you know, and they go, I think I might, yeah, you know my granddad. We're cousins. You know, there are lots of kids in the school who are sort of distantly related. It's just a lovely thing. You know, it's just so, it's difficult to explain how great that feels. And I think also whether you're an adult or you're a child, but particularly a child, and I went to lots of different schools around the Northeast, you know whether you're welcome there.
100%.
And when your children come here and they meet people like you in your team, they feel it. And I've said this to people in your schools, you can have a banner with 40, in 40 different languages, welcome, but you can feel it when you walk in.
So true.
And children know, you can't fool children.
You cannot. You cannot.
Not at all.
You know, they can see through all of that.
They certainly can.
And that's what's good about Sunderland Uni. You know, when with children, you are very aware of whether people like you or not, whether you belong in a certain place. And I think when those children come to Sunderland Uni, they pick that up. You know, and your children, any children from any backgrounds, it's not just GRT, it's children who come from different backgrounds. They're made to feel different very often, and they do feel different, but they feel welcome, you know, and you can have banners up in 40 different languages that say welcome, but it's a feeling. You go into a school, you come into this organisation, and you feel it. You know, you can tell whether you're wanted or not, or whether you're welcome or not, very, very quickly. Yeah. You know, and in Sunderland Uni, we are, because you demonstrate that.
Great. Thank you. I'm afraid we're out of time today, but I'm sure we'll continue these discussions through the course of the day. We've got a full packed agenda of Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month celebrations. So thank you so much, George and Paula and Richard, for joining us today. It's been a great discussion and one that I'm sure we'll continue through the course of the day. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to my colleagues here at the University of Sunderland who've worked so hard behind the scenes on this event and our other events today. So thank you to everyone. And my final thank you is to everyone watching for taking the time to learn more about the collaborative work that we're doing and how we can all play a part in Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month and being part of that change. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you again soon at another roundtable discussion.